is teach. Teach is a big one when it comes to makers, and online courses, especially right now, are having a big moment. So, teach might be something you're really interested in, and if you are, aside from this, again, quick and dirty brainstorm, I am currently in the process of making a big online course that is not going to be on Skillshare, but some I'm gonna have some lead up courses that will be on Skillshare, and then a bigger like signature course that's not going to be on Skillshare, all about teaching. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned. But for now, let's head on to what do I mean by teach. So if you are a maker and teaching is a way that you want to bring in revenue, it's important to think about what you want to teach and where and how you want to teach them. So one way to choose a topic is to think about, like, what do you love to do? What do you love to make? Another way that I've found is important to figure out what would be a good thing for you to teach is if you love talking about something. If you're really passionate about a specific subject and you could just talk about it for hours and hours and hours, or you could write about it for hours and hours and hours, then it might be something that you would be good at teaching. Other important things just in terms of marketing yourself and making sure you actually get students are thinking about what other people are teaching and how you might be able to put a spin on something if lots of other people already teach it, or how you might be able to teach someone new. You might be able to teach someone something new or different than how it's been taught before. And I will say this, even if you're teaching a class that lots of other people have done, if you really try to think about the way that you learned how to do it and teach it from your perspective, the people who you teach are still going to gain something from learning about that subject from your perspective. So, lots of my classes are classes that lots of other people have taught, but that doesn't mean my students haven't had a good time watching them. So it's also important when you're teaching classes that you have students who are interested. So I'm going to say this a couple times, but when you're teaching something, I find it's more valuable to think about what you want to learn or what you once wanted to learn, as opposed to what you think would be fun to teach. Because sometimes if you think something would be fun to teach, it doesn't necessarily mean people want to take the class. For example, one of my worst classes was a class, not worst quality, but like least populated Skillshare classes right now is my Galaxies for Kids class. And I thought that that would be so fun to make. But it turns out my audience, only a few members of my audience were interested in that. So it's just a key thing to think about. So, and then also the what on teaching is where you could teach. So that could mean online classes or in-person workshops, private classes, short tutorials online like on YouTube or other places. You could teach via printable resources or physical ones like in a workbook or practice sheets or anything like that. Or you could also kind of be creative and go on a platform like Patreon where people pay you to be an artist, and then in return you create special workshops or behind the scenes things or resources just for them. So there are pros and cons to all of these things. There are fluctuating prices to all of these things, and pricing is not something we're going into in this class. I am going to be creating a Skillshare class on pricing in the near future, so just know that. I also want to note that online classes could be short form or long form. It could be like a short Skillshare class, or it could be like long 10-hour something, but it kind of depends on what the subject and on what you feel comfortable doing. So this is the what on teaching, and now let's talk about the where. Okay, so now that we've covered the what of teaching, let's talk about where you can teach. There are so many different places to teach, and like everything else I've talked about, this list is by no means exhaustive, but it does represent a lot of the different places I've come up with in my own brainstorming. So first, let's talk about online classes. Obviously, Skillshare is a platform I wholeheartedly recommend. Full disclosure, the money I get each month from Skillshare makes up the lion's share of my monthly income, and I am focusing a lot of my business toward online classes and classes like Skillshare and workshops because of that. Because I know that in the year and a half since I've opened my Skillshare channel and have started creating classes, it has been part of my business that has done really well. And I guess just my skill set lends itself pretty well to teaching. So, and the people who follow me really we enjoy that relationship together. So I really recommend Skillshare. There are other existing marketplaces though as well. Udemy is one that comes to mind. Udemy is a little different from Skillshare in that it's not subscription based like Skillshare is, as opposed to on Skillshare, if you are a consumer, you pay Skillshare, you know, the $15 a month, or you get the yearly package, and then you get access to all of the classes. On Udemy, you purchase each class individually, or like you purchase a bundle of classes if a specific instructor has a bundle deal or something like that. But it's similar to Skillshare in that it is free for instructors to upload. And then Udemy just takes a portion of each class's commission, depending on what you do. I believe there are two price structures with Udemy. Either you can use their advertising platform so that they can help you market your class and like put your class on through their algorithms and stuff to help market it, and then they would take half of what your class would cost, or you handle all of your own advertising and you only use their platform as a way to just house a course. And if that's the case, then I believe you get to keep a lot more of the chunk of how much the class costs. So that's Skillshare and Udemy. Creative Live is one where, as opposed to like just being able to upload, you'd have to kind of reach out to Creative Live and apply for classes, but it's similar in that it's a marketplace full of classes that you can pay for. It's like Udemy where you pay for individual classes, but you can go to Creative Live. People go to Creative Live to look for classes. And then there are lots of other platforms like that that have similar structures where you go to their website, they have a bunch of online classes, you search for a specific kind, and you choose the one you want. I think there's one called Skill Success that I came across a few years ago. Anyway, existing marketplace platforms are a great place to put online courses, especially if you are a beginner. I started my first Skillshare class when I first did my Skillshare class. My first Skillshare class was my Night Sky Skillshare class, and I had no idea what the heck I was doing. I just decided to film myself painting this really popular design that I had on Instagram, and I narrated it along the way, and I just used my phone. And I honestly have been just using my phone for the rest of my classes, and it's, you know, always a learning curve, but the more classes you teach, the easier it gets and the more comfortable you are. So Skillshare is a great place to start. If you are interested in learning how to teach classes on Skillshare, I may be doing a Skillshare class on that. I think there are other Skillshare classes that are specifically geared toward teaching you how to be a teacher, but if you would like to be and you want to talk more with me about it, just drop me a message and I'd be happy to chat with you about that. So other places other than existing marketplaces for like online courses, like long form or medium form online courses, are signature course platforms like Teachable or Teachery or Thinkific. Those are the three major ones I can think of right now. I think there are other ones too, but Teachable, Teachery, and Thinkific are all platforms where you, as the instructor, pay a subscription every month to get access to this platform, and then their software provides you with like a landing page, a landing sales page, a place to upload your videos, and just provides like a classroom. Basically, you're paying to have rent, I guess, an online classroom, so that you don't have to put it on your own website or anything like that. They also typically handle all payment methods, so it means that you basically don't have to come up with your own e-commerce function and member sign in on your own website, which is the number 3 on this list that I'm going down, where you can have online classes. If you don't want to use somebody else's platform, you can always use your own website. But to be honest, I don't really know much about creating your website so that it has a member sign-in option, which is what you would need to do if you had a paid course, because you'd need an option for people to like create an account and then access the course that they've purchased on your website. And but I know a lot of people who do it this way, so that's just something you might need to do a little bit more research on if that's the option you want to go with. That's part of the reason why places like Teachable and Teachery and Thinkific require you to pay them a subscription every month, right? Is so that you don't have to go through the hassle of managing all of that on your own. But if you want that hassle and you don't want to pay another platform a certain amount each month to host your online course, then doing that research might be worth it for you. So that is one thing that you can look into. And then, of course, you can always go with YouTube. Even for long online classes. The thing about YouTube, though, is you need 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 minutes watched to be eligible for monetization. So I mentioned YouTube here because I don't know that, I mean, I might have been the last person on the planet to know this, but until about 2 years ago, I didn't know that people got paid on YouTube, like by YouTube. I just thought famous YouTubers, got paid like via promotional packages, but with companies reaching out to them or whatever. But actually, if you connect your YouTube account through AdSense, YouTube will actually pay you based on like number of clicks, that people click on the ads that are part of your classes and stuff, and how many minutes, like how viral your videos go. So YouTube is also a place where you could potentially get a payout, but it takes a little bit more to get to that point because, again, you do need 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 minutes watched to be eligible to be paid for your videos. So that's where you could potentially teach online classes. You could, for short tutorials, which are, I would consider similar to online classes, or like maybe if you just had like a lesson instead of a full class, YouTube again is a great place for that. Patreon is another good place for that. I mentioned Patreon in the lesson before this one. Patreon is a place, like an online platform where artists can basically can ask for patrons or people who are going to pay them to exist. Like a patron of a college or something is somebody who donates a lot of money, who donates money to help fund somebody else to go to college. And Patreon is very similar. So like if you have patrons on Patreon, it means they're paying you a certain amount per thing you create or per month or whatever. And then in return, on your Patreon page, you have like behind the scenes videos or special offers that you only offer to your patrons, things like that. So that's a place where you can leave short tutorials in exchange for people paying you to create those short tutorials. You can also, for short tutorials, host like a paid webinar or a live stream. There are lots of different softwares for you to host webinars or live streams, so if you Google any of them, I'm sure you'll come up with something good. I've thought about before, like, instead of going through some kind of paid service, I've thought about doing it over a members-only Facebook Live group or on Google Hangouts if I wanted to do a live online class, or on webinar. I know that Zoom is a place that does webinars. Anyway, there are lots of places and platforms for you to do that. And then my biggest, if the platform you're using doesn't have a sign-up option or a ticket option included, then you could always just go to Eventbrite and create your own ticket and just kind of handle that yourself. So that could be something that you look more into. But online is a place where you could do like an online shorter lesson that's not quite like a longer class, a longer course. So that's short tutorials. And then to wrap up classes, then we'll go to resources. To wrap up classes, you can also do in-person workshops or private classes. Both of those things work really well locally. So if you just kind of want to work with people face to face and have your own workshop where people come to your class and you're working with them like you're all physically working together, then there are lots of different places you can think about doing that. First, you can rent a workshop space, or rent a venue. Basically, the only thing you'd need, if it's an art workshop or something where you're working or making something, you definitely need like either a large table or multiple tables where people can have plenty of space to create things. So if you're going to rent a place, you need to make sure that either they have tables and chairs for you, or you know how to get tables and chairs. Typically, you can like do half a day of rent or a full day of rent for an event space, and depending on the day or the time, it will be more expensive. So you can always look up that, and event spaces that host lots of different things like conferences and parties and stuff will probably host workshops. You could also do, for workshops, work with a specific venue that might benefit from hosting your workshop. So all of my workshops that I do in Washington, D.C., I host at retail stores. We have there's a very vibrant, like, shop small vibe that goes on in Washington, D.C. So, like, I host my workshops that double as event venues, and the stores sell small business items. So it makes sense to also promote makers there. And the way that I get paid is based on ticket sales. We split the percentage of the ticket sales based on a percent that me and the venue agreed on beforehand. Sometimes the venue will have just like a standard, this is how much I'm going to take, and sometimes there's room for negotiation. So you just kind of have to figure it out. One thing I'm going to say about working with a specific venue is make sure when you're negotiating the price breakdown, if they're taking a big chunk, like sometimes spaces like that want to break it down 50-50, or like 60-40, they take 40% and you take 60 because you have to pay for materials and stuff. If they're taking more than 30%, they need to be bringing in most of the students. So one of the biggest benefits to working with a venue space that curates makers and curates workshops like that is that they probably have their own means of advertising and their own following of people who regularly check their event calendar and stuff like that. And so in my experience, the reason you work with them is because they can bring in more students than maybe you can by yourself. So if you are negotiating a price and they want 50-50, but they're expecting you to bring in most of the students, that's not a good deal. You're doing almost all of the work. The only thing that they're providing is the venue and making sure that like it's a clean place, which is not nothing, it's true, but like you're spending hours and hours and hours coming up with a curriculum and all the materials, and like you're the one who's creating the class and bringing in people who might not regularly come into their store. So you're doing them, like they need you almost more than you need them, to be quite frank. So if you are negotiating something, this is just my general rule of thumb. If they're taking more than 20 or 30% of your ticket sales, then they need to be bringing in most of the students. And if that's not happening, then you need to have a talk with them. So I'm saying this because obviously from experience, I have worked with places that have taken a lot of my ticket sales and have brought in 0 students. And because my following is mostly online, a lot of people who follow, like, if you follow me on Instagram, I have over 100K followers, and that's awesome, but most of them don't live in DC. So in order for me to have that, like, to get the word out about my workshops locally, I really need venues with local connections. So that's my soapbox about working with a venue. But other than that, it's really awesome to work with a venue because they really usually do have a really vibrant network, and it's a great way to get connected with a lot of other makers and artists in your area. So for in-person workshops, you can work with a venue, you can rent workshop space. Sometimes craft stores don't even require you to pay. Hobby Lobby is one that comes to mind, actually. Most Hobby Lobbies have a classroom in their store, classroom space, that's available for reservation, and they don't charge. So I will say about Hobby Lobby is, at least the Hobby Lobbies that I've hosted workshops at before, is their system's pretty janky. They don't have emails or an application system or anything. You call or you walk into the store and ask about their student workshop space, and then they direct you to the one person who runs that stuff, and then she or he will manually put that stuff on their website and like write it in a calendar. So it's not like a very formalized method. But it's free. So that's could be interesting for you if you're looking to host a workshop and don't have a lot of overhead to pay a venue. Then Hobby Lobby is also always a good spot. And other places, other crafty places like that might have similar arrangements. So you might just want to ask. And then last but not least, in in-person workshops, you could also host private classes and like private tutoring sessions or private workshops where like a student inquires about how much it would be to host an art birthday party, or to host a workshop at a business during lunch hour or something like that. And if that's the case, then usually the person inquiring about that is going to know what the venue is. So for private classes, if I'm working one-on-one with the student, usually I offer to go to them to have the class in their home. I have done a private workshop in my home before, but most often I will drive to the student who wants the private class. So anyway, that's in-person workshops and private classes. And then finally, another way that you can teach, we talked about, is to create resources, like printable resources that people can purchase from you. So that's like practice sheets, that's ebooks, that's anything that's not them watching you or listening to you that they can purchase as like a physical product or an online thing that they can print. That's probably what I would consider to be a resource that you've created for them. That's a method of you teaching. So you can sell that in marketplaces like Etsy. You can sell them on your own website if you have an e-commerce function. You could even sell them over social media. If you don't really have a formalized way of going about it, you can let people know and just email anybody who pays you. Patreon, again, is also another place where you can give away resources like that for people who are patrons of your profession. So there you go. That is my quick and dirty breakdown. I keep saying quick and dirty, but that's really just what I think about this class. It's not so much like an in-depth, here's exactly how to do everything you've ever wanted. It's more just like, this is when I sit down to brainstorm how I can possibly make money and what direction I want to go. This is what I came up with. So that's the where of teaching. And now we are going to go to how.
Hi, thank you so much for joining me in this video of my Ways to Make Money as a Freelance Artist series. I had such a fun time making this for you, and I can't wait to make you even more content. So if you like what you see, or if you liked any of my, I have some watercolor tutorials as well, make sure to hit that subscribe button because that's the best way to support YouTubers that you want to continue making content for you. And if you want to view any of the other videos in this Ways to Make Money series, make sure to check the description below this video. It has a full course schedule that details when the rest of the classes will be released, and if they've already been released, then it will have links to those classes as well. So thank you again for joining me, and can't wait to see you next time.